Cam Smith's fifth win of 2022 was the least surprising but most emotional. Cameron Smith's first trip back to his native Australia in 3 years wasn't just about headlining the Australian PGA Championship and showing off the Claret Jug to family and friends in his hometown of Brisbane. For the world number 3, who now plays on Live Golf with its 54-hole events, it was also a return to the traditional form of the game, 72 holes of stroke play, a halfway cut and official world golf ranking points. And it was a winning return. To close out his third career Australian PGA Championship victory, the 2017 and 2018 champion battled two weather delays in Sunday's final round at Royal Queensland Golf Club en route to securing a three-shot victory at the DP World Tour co-sanctioned event. 3 birdies in his final 7 holes, and a clutch bunker save at the 18th, gave Smith a closing 68 and a 14 under par, 270, total. Japan Tour regular Ryo Hisatsune, 65, and Australia's Jason Scrivener, 67, tied for second at 11 under. Smith had already won 4 tournaments in a memorable, if also controversial 2022 season. 3 came on the PGA Tour, including the Century Tournament of Champions, the Players' Championship and the 150th Open at St Andrews before the 28-year-old joined Live and went on to win in just his second start on the upstart Saudi-backed circuit outside of Chicago. But the Australian PGA Championship was the most emotional triumph, given the amount family in the gallery who hadn't seen Smith play in person since before the COVID-19 pandemic when Australia introduced harsh travel restrictions. Among the loved ones at Royal Queensland was Smith's grandmother, Carol, who recently underwent 2 chemotherapy treatments. Impressively, she walked all 72 holes this week, including Sunday's 7-hour, weather-interrupted final day. In all 4 rounds, Carol wore a custom-made Team Smith maroon t-shirt, the color Smith chooses to wear in final rounds because it is worn by his beloved Queensland State rugby team. "I can't believe she did it," Smith said as he choked up on the 18th green at Royal Queensland. "I can't believe she did it." Smith seemed stoic, as he showed at St Andrews when he overcame a 4-shot deficit to Rory McIlroy and Victor Hovland in the final round. But is he actually an emotional player who handles nerves and sentiment better than most? "I wouldn't say I let emotion get in the way of what I'm trying to do, but it's nice to have a little bit of fire in the belly for sure," he said. At the par 3 11th, after the first weather delay, there was a turning point. Smith made a bogey, moments after Scrivener had birdied number 13. It dropped Smith to a tie for the lead after starting the day with a 3-shot cushion. Then, Smith hooked his tee shot into the trees on the drivable par 4 12th. But he pulled off a miraculous flop shot over a tree to close range for birdie. He made it and never looked back. "Scrive is a great player and I knew he'd keep putting the pressure on me," Smith said. Smith's win was also meaningful given he is conscious of criticism he faced after leaving the PGA Tour, where his 6 career victories were establishing a legacy. That criticism came from icons like 9-time major winner Gary Player, who questioned why Smith would defect to a tour that features 54-hole events, no cut and 48-player fields. "What sort of tour is that?" Player said. Former Masters winner Fred Couples also spoke up, although his was more of a swipe. He posted on social media, "To all my friends who I missed birthdays and weddings, so sorry. I was busy earning a living on the PGA Tour and in my line of work the goal is to earn your way to work weekends, and by weekends I mean 72 holes." It was a reference to one of the reasons Smith offered for why he'd left the PGA Tour for Live, apart from the massive, guaranteed money, which he acknowledged being able to return to Australia for prolonged periods of time was a factor in his move. Smith said it had been "To all my friends who I missed birthdays and weddings, so sorry. I was busy earning a living on the PGA Tour and in my line of work the goal is to earn your way to work weekends, and by weekends I mean 72 holes." In the PGA Tour's wraparound schedule required him to spend the majority of the year in the US. "I wanted to prove to myself and to others that I'm still a great player," Smith said after winning Live's $20 million event in Chicago. Smith's return to 72-hole stroke play for the first time since the PGA Tour's FedEx St. Jude Championship in Memphis proved he remains one of the world's best golfers, regardless of the format. He became the second Live golfer to win a DP World Tour event, joining Spain's Adrian Otaegui who won the Andalusia Masters in October. A February court hearing in the UK will determine if Live golfers can be prohibited from playing DP World Tour events. Although the strength of field at the Australian PGA did not offer the same threat PGA Tour events used to for Smith, he still lined up against DP World Tour winners like Min Woo Lee, who finished tied 4th at 7 under, Rasmussen Nikolai Højgaard, And Ryan Fox, along with PGA Tour winners like Adam Scott, Mark Leishman, Cameron Davis, and Lucas Herbert. Smith only won 10 world ranking points, so there won't be any movement within the top 10 in the world rankings. But he will remain world number 3, and that is not likely to change even if he were to win next week's Australian Open in Melbourne. No matter. Smith signed off on a whirlwind year with the Australian PGA Championship's Joe Kirkwood Cup, which sat beside his Claret Jug in the clubhouse at Royal Queensland Sunday night. Joe Kirkwood was an Australian PGA pro who is credited with putting Australian golf on the map, via his 13 PGA Tour wins in the 1920s and 1930s, but also with a series of trick shot events he held with Walter Hagen. Those who drank out of the Claret Jug and Joe Kirkwood Cup Sunday night included family, friends, and fans. High-profile Australian athletes also wanted a drink out of the jug, like some of the rugby league football players from Smith's beloved Queensland Maroons, past and present. One of them is ironically named Cameron Smith, considered one of the greatest players in rugby league history, and fellow icon Jonathan Thurston. "The reception from everyone has been pretty outstanding," Smith said. "Guys that I have looked up to on the football field are coming up and asking me for a beer or a game of golf. It's pretty cool." Brisbane, Australia. The Claret Jug is one of the most famous trophies in sports, engraved with the names of many of the most iconic golfers in history. Each year, the winner of the Open Championship receives a replica to show off for 12 months and then hand back the following year. As significant as it may be in the golf world, the Claret Jug does not, however, get any special treatment by security staff at Los Angeles International Airport. This is something that its current holder, Cameron Smith, found out recently on a long journey back to his native Australia. Smith, who won the 150th Open at St Andrews in July, recently undertook the 9,000-mile trek from his base in Jacksonville, Florida, to his home in Brisbane to compete in this week's Australian PGA Championship. Upon arrival at LAX Airport, security made Smith open the travelling case in which the trophy was kept so that they could perform a very routine bomb search before the 15-hour flight to Australia's east coast. More, Cam Smith has earned a place among pro golf's elite in a way all his own. Once Smith, his father, Day, and childhood best friend and support staffer, Jack Wilcox, had touched down in Sydney, there was another Claret Jug curveball, the case for the trophy, which is 20 3/4 inches tall and 7 1/4 inches wide at its base, wouldn't fit in the overhead for the final flight from Sydney to Brisbane. In the end, airline staff allowed the 29-year-old Smith to stash the jug in the compartment where jackets are kept for business-class passengers. Only 30 hours of travel later, Smith was in his homeland after a 3-year absence caused by Australia's harsh COVID-19 border restrictions. Cam had a window seat flying into Brisbane and his eyes were glued to the view outside after a long time away, Wilcox told Golf Digest on Tuesday at Royal Queensland GC, host of the Australian PGA. Added Smith, "Cam had a window seat flying into Brisbane and his eyes were glued to the view outside after a long time away." When he arrived at Brisbane Airport last Thursday, Smith was swarmed by media and hundreds of Australian fans wanting a photo with one of the country's most talked-about athletes in 2022, a golf star who sports a famous mullet and who won 3 PGA Tour events, including the Open at the home of golf, then controversially left the U.S. circuit to join the rival Live Golf Series. "It's insane," Smith said of Australians' reactions to the Claret Jug so far. "It's insane." More, Cam Smith settles into life on Live Golf, but one heartbreaking concern remains. The Claret Jug's tour down under then made a sentimental stop at Smith's childhood home course, Wantima Country Club, last Saturday. It's not really a country club as such, more a blue-collar, publicly accessible golf club 30 minutes north of Brisbane where Smith honed his game before moving on to Royal Queensland as an elite teenage amateur. Wantima hosted a celebration for Smith and 200 members inside its modest clubhouse. Smith sat down for a 45-minute Q&A session before passing the jug around to the members to chug 4X Gold, Smith's favorite beer from his home state of Queensland, from its sterling silver spout. "It was an amazing night for members," said Jason Patterson, Wantima's general manager on Tuesday as he showed Golf Digest several proud, but understated, shrines to Smith inside the clubhouse. "It was an amazing night for members." Adds Smith, "It was pretty neat for a little club like that on the north side of Brisbane to have that jug in the clubhouse, something those people will never forget." The homecoming formalities were turned up a notch Tuesday morning when Brisbane Mayor Adrian Schrinner handed the keys to the city to Smith, the 52nd recipient to receive the honour but the first golfer. "Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd get the keys," Smith said, before joking that not in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd get the keys. Smith then held a press conference at Royal Queensland to talk about his primary purpose for coming back to Australia, to try and win a third Australian PGA championship, having won the 2017 and 2018 edition, and to try and earn a maiden Australian Open win next week in Melbourne. Smith came close at the 2016 Australian Open when he lost in a playoff to Jordan Spieth at Royal Sydney. This week, he'll face strong competition from solid players such as 2013 Masters winner Adam Scott, Lucas Herbert, and Cam Davis, as well as DP World Tour star Ryan Fox from New Zealand and Minwoo Lee. But after some rest following LIV Golf's Steam Championship in Miami last month, where Smith took his All-Australian team to second place finish, the world number 3 is feeling good. After this upcoming stretch of golf, Smith will take almost 2 months off and remain in Australia before LIV's second season starts in February. He said he was confident he could arrive at the majors in 2023 competitively sharp, despite LIV's format of 54 holes and no 36-hole cut. If nothing else, he says he's motivated to win another Open so that he can keep that Claret Jug for another year. "I think coming close in a few majors has made me really hungry. I felt like I should have had one before this, but I'm happy this was the first one," Smith said, referencing his close calls at the Masters, including a tie for third behind final group partner Scottie Scheffler at Augusta this year and a share of second to Dustin Johnson at the 2020 Masters. "I think coming close in a few majors has made me really hungry. I felt like I should have had one before this, but I'm happy this was